Hello there everyone and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with me, your host, Laz Michaelides, as well as our other host on the screen opposite me, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, man?
How you doing, Laz? How's everyone doing? It's been really good lately here, so how's it going in the countryside, Laz?
It's okay, yeah. I'm playing a spot of rugby today, obviously, because that's what English people do on their Saturdays. They have tea and crumpets in the morning, followed by a game of rugby, and then a bacon sandwich in the evening. That's the British way.
Rock and roll, brother.
No good, bro. What about yourself? How are things in Soho?
Yeah, well, busy, gigging. You know, I had 2 gigs last night, so pretty cool.
In one night, yeah. Jesus, this guy's a monster. Anyway, let's crack on then. So we're doing an album episode today, and I've chosen the album, and the album I've chosen is Hunky Dory by David Bowie. And it's quite interesting because we have basically a huge list of all the artists and albums that we want to cover. And obviously with some artists, there are going to be multiple albums that we want to talk about. And so I thought, why have I chosen this one? Because before having put it in the list that we need to do, I hadn't actually listened to it, but I was told that it's the first one that kick-started Bowie's sort of, well, his musically artistic career. You know, he did albums before that, I believe, but this is the one that kind of got it going for the Bowie that we know. So I chose this one because obviously we're going to do things like Ziggy Stardust in however many episodes time or whatever. We'll get to those ones, but this is the one that kick-started it off for Bowie, which I suppose is why I chose it. Felipe, have you heard this album before? Have you listened to it before? Do you like Bowie?
Do you know what? I like Bowie. I like him, and it's a funny thing because when I started listening to classic rock and all this stuff, it took me a while to find anything about Bowie, maybe because I was more into the hard rock kind of stuff. And I've listened to some of his songs. Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. And or maybe because I didn't pay attention to the lyrics or whatever. Because you've got to go into the lyrics and understand his art, you know, in a deeper way if you actually want to enjoy him, isn't it? But I've obviously always heard about him, stuff like that. But it took me quite a few years to start listening to Bowie properly. But every time I listened to something, it was like, oh my God, this is mind blowing. Is not predictable, like in any shape or form. It's not.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's just. Each album is very different from the other one, and that's why I was wondering why you chose this one, because it's how do you choose one album to talk about, you know, from an artist like Bowie?
That's why I thought of all these albums. Remember guys, we did Rubber Soul a few episodes ago, and I thought that if you're doing Beatles albums, you don't start at Abbey Road. Do you? You sort of work it up. You do Rubber Soul, Revolver, then White Album, and then you get to Abbey Road. I kind of felt the same with Bowie. I thought, you know, one day we will do the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust. I know he's got a couple of other albums after that are quite seminal as well. But I thought it was just interesting to, you know, this one also gets thrown into the mix as well of his best albums. You know, Hunky Dory is quite often up there, so that's why I thought we'd do it. But anyway, I want to get started by giving Felipe a quiz. Question 1. Which song from this album was the final song Bowie would sing live before his death?
Oh, tough one. I would guess Life on Mars.
No, it was Changes. Question 2. Bowie's annoyance at which famous singer inspired another one of these songs?
Is it Lou Reed?
It's not, no.
Damn it. Didn't get one right.
Do you want to know?
No, I want to know.
It's Mr. Frank Sinatra.
Really?
Yeah, so here's what happened. So, David Bowie was commissioned to write English lyrics to a song called Comme d'habitude by a French composer called Claude François. he rejected them. The person who he was writing them for rejected the lyrics. I don't know why, but maybe the translation wasn't good. Maybe he didn't word it nice. And they gave the lyrics to this song to a gentleman, another songwriter called Paul Anka. Paul Anka then rewrote the lyrics and gave it to the person who then gave it to Sinatra and said, hey, sing this song. Sinatra opens the lyrics, My Way.
My Way. So
the song My Way. The chord progression in Life of Mars starts the same. It's the same chord progression as My Way. And Bowie did Life on Mars because he was pissed off that Sinatra got My Way. It's cool. And question 3. Who left the room upon hearing one of the songs from the album, having hated it?
Andy Warhol.
Yay, there we go. You got that one. Anyway, right, so this album, the name is Hunky Dory. The artist was David Bowie. It was released in December 1971 on the RCA label. And unusually, what I've done is I've actually taken quite a deep dive into the sort of thinking and the mental inspiration and influence that Bowie had when doing this album, because it's very different, kind of different from in general what I think you'd hear from other artists. So
yeah,
there's a few influences in terms of themes of this album. You've got Insanity. He had a brother called, was it Terry Burns, who had schizophrenia. And this theme comes up quite a lot in this album. His wife was pregnant and he was about to be a father for the first time. So he was dealing with the immense pressure of having to bring a child into this world, becoming a responsible parent for this child. He'd also been reading a lot of cult books, watching a lot of movies about the occult and listening to vinyl records and stuff like that. And someone summed it up and said this album is an honest account of a man struggling to make sense of his life. What have you done in regards to sort of reading up on this album? Have you musically listened, or have you looked at the lyrics?
I've looked into the lyrics, man, all of them. And you've mentioned the Bowie brothers, isn't it? The last song.
That's it, yeah.
Which is about his brother, about insanity. And I think that song, for instance, is about the way his brother perceives him. It's that thing saying he's trying to picture himself through the eyes of his brother who is mentally ill.
Yeah.
And it's like he's trying to make sense of it, trying to understand someone else's point of view. So I think the album in general, like lyric wise, is really, really deep, and it digs really deep into the human soul. I think the way I perceive it, Bowie is picturing an unfinished image of himself.
Wow,
to get it.
Say that
because it's like I still don't know who I am.
Right.
It starts with changes. So as I said, he's not sure about am I going to be a good father? Was I a good brother?
Right.
Why am I influenced by Bob Dylan, Andy Warhol, and Lou Reed? Because those guys are there, in the album, and it's so honest, in my opinion. The way he pictures all of that, and for me, it's unfinished. It's not like I don't know who I am, but I'm putting it out there anyway.
Yeah, that's really funny because the whole album, I don't know if you know this, the whole album, all of the songs, apart from one song, which is Feel Your Heart, which is a cover, all of these are tracks written by Bowie that were intended for other artists. All of them.
Wow. I knew about Life on Mars. I didn't know that he was pissed off with Frank Sinatra, but I knew about that connection with My Way, but I didn't know that all of them were. So he was like doing songwriting for other people.
Yeah, if you
probably got rejected.
No, you never know. Yeah, I mean, if you can actually look into each song. I wrote so much about each song that I won't be able to find it. But each song was written for different people. Whether friends or his of the Sinatra one. Had he gotten the Sinatra one right, maybe it'd be My Way, written by David Bowie and Sinatra. You never know. But yeah, that's the funny thing, is that they all were written initially for other people, and I think why that's so interesting is because you've got quite a mix of stuff on this album, and I know it's all one kind of. We were speaking the other day. What was that last album we did? We did Jethro Tull, we did Aqualung,
Yeah.
and we've done a few albums where we've spoken very openly. The Animals as well. We spoke how we can hear so many different genres in their music.
Yeah.
That, one song might be a Motown mixed with some funk. The next song might be a pop rock ballad mixed with some this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
This, I feel like it's all the same. I feel like he doesn't stray off the path too much, but you're hearing so many different sides of what he can do as a songwriter.
Yeah, and I think his vocals are like emphasized by the way they arranged the songs.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't famous for being a technical singer, but he could deliver so much emotion, and he was so expressive. And I think the way they produced the album was intentionally displaying this vocal ability he had. Because if you think there's a formula that happens like pretty much through the first half of the album, which is
what's that?
Verse on piano and vocals only, and the band joins them for the chorus, and then drops out, and then it's just piano and vocals again. Good point. So there's a lot of just it's Rick Wakeman on piano, by the way, right?
Yeah.
you just confirmed that information to me. So it's like, come on, you got a world-class musician like Rick Wakeman playing like often he's playing simple stuff, but like it's dramatic, isn't it? The piano, the strings are very dramatic as well. So there's a it feels to me like there's an element of opera sometimes with the strings, with the and there's So it's quite. I think you can clearly see that the instruments are there. They are well played, but they're mainly serving the vocals. They like, let's make Bowie shine, which is what you should do in an artist album, not a band album. No?
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, we've already spoken a bit about the Bowie brothers. You mentioned the opera. For me, there's such a, at the end of the song where the Cockney, I can't remember the lyrics, but you have those Cockney voices singing the outro of the song after Bowie's done his part, and it felt really musical theatre-y to me. You just said opera, just said the musical theatre, where you got those Cockney voices. I wish I could remember the lyrics, but they say, oh, he's a jolly man. It's like it's just like a chorus of a musical theatre group. And this is Bowie. This is drama. It's dramatic.
Well, and if you listen to "Feel Your Heart," you have a piano that sounds a bit like ragtime, which is one of the genres that was there in the beginning of jazz. So it's part of what created jazz. So a bit of ragtime piano and the strings and drums playing with brushes. It's a bit New Orleans somehow. Somehow in the middle of a song that has nothing to do with that. So and I think all of that again is just to emphasize the lyrics and the melodies, and it's everything in terms of the instruments is really creative, but clearly in the background for me, it's like, listen, there's some cool stuff going on, but let's listen to the singer. And the songs are short. All songs are short. So I think I'm going to guess that you might not even be aware of this, but I think you like this album because it probably reminds you of Frank Zappa somehow.
That's really
because I know you're a big Zappa fan.
That's crazy
because there is an element of Zappa somehow.
There is. Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's crazy because I thought that myself yesterday when I listened to a few of these songs. Mainly the start of Andy Warhol, the end of the Bowie brothers. All the weird shit. That was what I thought of Zappa. But it's at the end of Bowie brothers, there's a he gets the voice. I'm not sure whose voice it is, but you kind of distort it and he makes the voice sound like this, and then he changes it up to this, and then he changes, and he's pitch shifting the voice. And Zappa did a lot of that. There's a song called I can't remember. Take Your Clothes Off When You Dance, where he keeps messing around with this voice and this pitch shifting.
Oh, I see.
And it's got to be roughly the same time. Maybe I think Zappa was late 60s doing this. This is early 70s. So the funny thing is that this album overall has been talked of as what people would call art rock. Now, art rock it's there's not really you can't really say who's your favorite art rock band because it's not like an established genre. It's adding stuff. It's experimenting with unusual stylistic and technological influences, and you can hear it quite a lot, can't you?
Yeah, you can, and again, that's why for me it's more like a picture. You know what I mean? It's an image. It's an image of David Bowie's mind in that moment in time. I feel like it's
point. Yeah,
it's like, and I'll insist on this. It's unfinished. It's like, who the hell am I? And I'm trying to figure out as I write.
Yeah,
and as I show, like my strengths and my weaknesses to everyone. So it's like it's quite poetic. I mean, just the fact that he actually written a song just called 8-Line Poem, which is an 8-line poem. It's like that's what I'm saying. It's so honest. It's like, okay, I don't need to. There is a bit of a formula in terms of arrangements, but you can't find that on the lyrics. You know, it's like I've written this 8-line poem. How am I going to call it? Okay, 8-line poem, and that's what it is. And it doesn't have to be more than that. It feels to me like it's just brutally honest all the time.
No, you're right about that. And I think what matters a lot is, and we should talk about this now, is the writing and the composition of the album. And for those who don't know, this basically is how the album was written. Bowie would come with his lyrics. He would sit down with Rick Wakeman. I mean, just for those who don't know, Felipe, give us a quick CV of Rick Wakeman.
The best piano player, keyboard player in rock history. Is that all right?
Yeah, who's he played for?
I mean, he was famous for playing with Yes at the second lineup of the band, and he played in most of their classic albums. Also, he played with Ozzy Osbourne, and he had a really successful instrumental career as well, with number one instrumental hits and stuff like that. So he is the man. And if you don't know Rick Wakeman and you're into rock, you should check him out.
We'll put a couple of Rick Wakeman songs in the
playlist. I imagine that anyone who is older than us, they probably familiar with his work, of course. And also, he's got one of the funniest Twitter accounts on earth. Check it out.
Oh, does he really?
Funny. Yeah, he's talking about. Yeah, it's funny. Check it out. I'm not going to say.
There you go.
It's funny.
So Bowie would come with the lyrics, and him and Rick Wakeman would sit down at the piano, and Rick would build these gorgeously crafted piano intros. I mean, my experience with Rick Wakeman has only ever been listening to his progressive music, and as we've said for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes. Prog can be wanky, and that's fine. That's part of the genre, is like showing off what you guys can do in long extended solos. So as much as I knew Rick Wakeman was amazing, and he, his whole, the success and literal talents of his musicianship isn't just because he can play fast, but that's what I'd been exposed to. So having heard this, and hearing those fantastic piano intros on Oh You Pretty Things, Life on Mars, just so tasteful and really appropriate for the song. It really reminds me of this Elton John kind of songwriting style, isn't it? But the difference is, Elton John does his own thing. I think it's fantastic here. If you put yourself in the mind of Elton John, you're playing your piano and you can hear your melodies coming. And if the melody's too simple, or if the melody's too complicated, then you simplify the piano, or vice versa. But you do this all in your head because you're doing both instruments. But for Wakeman and Bowie to come together and write piano parts that fit Bowie's medleys so beautifully, that's just exquisite songwriting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's two music geniuses working together, really. And Wakeman is essential to the album. Yeah. Bowie wasn't an instrumentalist.
Yeah,
he wasn't a guy who would pick the guitar and come up with really complex chord progressions or anything. He was a guy who was writing lyrics and melodies, and that was his main thing. So you need a partner to actually provide you whatever foundation you need for your music. And I think Wakeman's just perfect because, as you said, he would play complex stuff and very creative and challenging stuff when he was doing the prog rock or his solo career stuff. But he played with Sabbath, and loads of the songs, and he played with Ozzy. He knows how to serve artists. He knows how to play for the music, and he doesn't make it about himself. It's not like, I'm playing here so you can check it out how good I am on the piano. Which he can do that in a prog rock context, but he wouldn't do that with an artist. Here's the thing I think though, comparing this album to prog rock, because you can see, because of Wakeman, because of the high level of experimental stuff, you might even consider that there's some similarities with prog rock, but the difference is you're experimenting, you're mixing up different styles, but you're keeping it short and sweet. That's what it is.
Yeah,
I think it's straight to the point most of the time. The intros are beautiful, but they're not long. The instruments are well played, but there's not too many notes. It's all serving the vocals, and I find that like beautiful. As a musician, I find it like a beautiful way of playing. So, hats off to everyone who played in the album. They're really, really good.
Yeah. So talking of the band, here are the members who played on the album. You got Bowie on vocals, guitar, saxophone, and piano. I mean, again, I know there's Bowie did a few of the piano intros, but Rick Wakeman was the main piano player here. So Bowie, vocals, guitar, saxophone, and a bit of piano. Mick Ronson, guitar and backing vocals. Trevor Bolder on bass and trumpet. Mick Woodmansey on drums, and Rick Wakeman on piano. And the producer, Ken Scott, of the album, he played the ARP synthesizer at the start of Andy Warhol. So those are your musicians. And we touched on Bowie and Rick Wakeman doing the bare bones of the songwriting in terms of getting melodies, chords, harmony, progressions all there together. But the third man who we can't miss out at all is the guitarist Mick Ronson, because what Mick Ronson did is he was in control of all of that stunning orchestration that you hear through the album. The strings, the brass, the clarinet, all, the whole orchestral stuff. If you hear that was Mick Ronson arranging that. And my God, just thinking about, the strings on Changes are lovely. Life on Mars, the orchestra, the strings make that song, towards the end, you got this huge, the strings dun da 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 da, like this huge, the ending of like a space movie, I imagine Life on Mars. I always want to see it alongside 2001, A Space Odyssey, that movie, because it just fits so well. Life on Mars, that's space. And I just think, we can't forget Mick Ronson, because the things, I don't really see there being any musical. I don't think there were any musical innovations or pioneerings on this album. I don't think anyone, we've spoken about Van Halen's first album, right? Well, Van Halen's, his guitar tapping was seminal. The mixture between a high poppy voice and metal music brought about the start of glam metal. This isn't special musically, I don't think. There's nothing here which says, oh, well, that was the first time this happened. They all do a good job. But you said it with Rick Wakeman, they are playing for the purpose of the song. And more often than not, as long as the piano, orchestra, and Bowie are there, then the job for the drums and bass becomes very easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not getting in the way, isn't it? It's about not getting in the way.
For the song.
There's so many parts of the songs that don't even have a groove. There's no drums and bass. And so the songwriting is so powerful that if you reduce any of those songs to either acoustic guitar and vocals or piano and vocals, they still sound amazing.
Yeah.
So that is...
You said that about Jethro Tull on the last episode, do you remember? A few episodes ago.
Yeah. That's one way I measure stuff. You can't say that about prog rock in general, because it's about, if you pick a 12-minute song with loads of solos and arrangements, you can't do that. Yeah. With Aqualung, you could do that, which is unusual for a prog rock band. And with this album by David Bowie, it's the same. So it's about the songwriting, and I think it really communicates. I think it might resonate with people because, as I said to you, it's honest. It's like, this is who I am. As I'm trying to make sense of myself, I'm trying to understand the world around me, and I'm writing about it as I think It feels to me, it feels to me that he had no filter between his thoughts and his pen. Yeah. Basically, that's how I feel. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm writing it down. There's no, all the lyrics are very spontaneous and quite unpredictable most of the time, I guess.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Because, so let's do that now. Let's talk sort of thematics of the album. One big theme of it is children. And like I mentioned at the start, this impending sense of, I'm not going to say doom at all, because it's not doom when you bring a child into the world, but apprehensiveness. He didn't know what it was like to be a father. He didn't know what it was like to be a dad and to have a child, someone that you've got to care for 24 hours a day. And so if we look at songs, track 1, Changes. Now, the first verse can be thought about to be, the whole point of the song is that he's priding himself in his confidence. He's staying ahead of his competitors. The line, "Look out, all you rock and rollers." Time makes he's giving the hint there. Verse 1 is about the artists trying to be different and trying to branch out from the mainstream. But verse 2 is about clashing between parents and children and urging the parents to let the kids be themselves so that they can grow artistically. And I thought that was interesting in regards to the kids. The track 5, which is called Kooks, this song was actually written to his son, Zoe. So hold on, sorry, segment. How rock and roll is that? Right, so here we are with the How Rock and Roll Is That segment. And the question I have to ask Felipe, how rock and roll is it that David Bowie named his son Zoe so that he could call him Zoe Bowie?
Wow, that is rock and roll. I'll give it a 77.
Fine, 77. I mean, there's calling your children funny names. We spoke about Frank Zappa. He had 4 kids. The most normal name of his 4 kids was Ahmed Zappa. The other was Dweezil, Moon Unit, and check this out for a name: Diva Thin Muffin Pigeon the Third Zappa.
The third.
Yeah, the third, as if there's been 3 more. Anyway, that's just calling your children stupid names for the sake of it. Yeah. Bowie had a reason here. He wanted the rhyme. Zoe.
He wanted a rhyme, exactly. That's very musical, very poetic. But I mean, I want to make something funny. I'm going to use my child to do so, exactly. Giving my child a funny name. Anyway, rhymes. Oh man,
he wrote the song Kooks for Zoe, his son. Listen, Zoe's real name is Duncan, I think, officially on the paperwork, but I think everyone calls him Zoe, apparently. And he actually wrote it in the style of Neil Young, which you can hear, this very sort of kind of country acoustic guitar groove. And the reason was because when he got the news of Zoe's birth, he was listening
to Neil Young.
Yeah, did you know that? It's lovely, isn't it? Really nice. So he thought, fuck it. I'm here listening to Neil Young. A huge moment in my life has happened, so I'm going to take this inspiration and this influence and turn it into some art. And that's how we have the song Kooks. But isn't this funny? Like what you were saying, we've got this continual pattern of Bowie just reflecting on his life at that moment.
Yeah, that's it. And using the immediate inspiration, like, I'm listening to this kind of music, so I'm going to write like that. Yeah, and I'm going to write a song for Bob Dylan. It's going to be called "Song for Bob Dylan." So it's straight to the point and very spontaneous. I think that's the main thing, and I like these reflections, these questions he seems to be asking himself and throwing out there, for everyone. Because I'm gonna mention my favorite line on the album. It's from the song "Quicksand." I'm sinking in the quicksand of my thought, and I ain't got the power anymore. So that, for me, sums up the album.
Yeah, he's got so much going on in his head that he's...
Yeah, it's like he just can't handle it. That's why the song "Feel Your Heart" comes just after that, because it's kind of a break from the whole... for me, "Feel Your Heart" is a song that breaks the mood of the album. It's
completely. Yeah, I've actually written down here, it's kind of like a counterpoint. The whole album, you've got this anxiety, these stresses, especially the lyrics of "Quicksand," and then he breaks it up with a song about love and freedom.
It takes like 7 songs for you to kind of break the tension, because it's all so dramatic until that point, and then when you have the kind of more subtle like instrumental parts in it, and I love this verse, really cool. Fill your heart with love today. Don't play the game of time. Things that happened in the past only happened in your mind. I love that line.
Yeah.
And it's like the fact that, the past doesn't quite exist. So, okay, I'm going to give you this insight I had about it. I was reading those lyrics and thinking about an article I read about time traveling, stuff like that. So about the theories of time traveling. Oh, cool. We're talking about time traveling. So, oh my God, how far did we go?
It only took 33 episodes.
But that's in the past.
Yeah.
So basically, this scientist was saying something like, well, theoretically, we could travel time. We could travel to the future, right? So there's a whole theory about, breaking the speed of sound or whatever, speed of light, or I don't know, whatever. You can. I'm not a scientist anyway. So you could theoretically travel to the future, but you could never travel to the past because the past does not exist.
Yeah.
And it's just it's so cool. You can't go back to something there's not there anymore.
Yeah.
It existed at some point. So that song is really cool. Like, things that happened in the past only happened in your mind. And it makes, as he's reflecting a lot about like his brother's mental illness and all this stuff, I think like, so those things only happen in your mind because you don't know exactly what happened in the past. Yeah. You only have your memories of the past. And as Roger Waters said, memory is a stranger. So.
Exactly. Sticking with the sci-fi theme, that's really interesting because one of his concerns at this time as well, we already said it. He's got his trying to find out who he is as an artist, what direction he's going to take. The birth of his son coming up / already happened. Another thing is that he was. I did already mention this. He was reading a lot of cult movies and reading a lot of cult books, watching cult movies, listening to cult records. And he was quite heavily influenced by some authors as well. So the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche he was listening to, the occultist Aleister Crowley. He was reading works by Arthur C. Clarke, the book Childhood End, and Edward Bulwer Lytton's The Coming Race. And actually, in the song "Oh You Pretty Things," it was funny because I was going to come on to this earlier about his child, because you can also, just from some of the lyrics, you can hear "Oh You Pretty Things." It's about the welcome of a child, but also the lyrics get a bit darker. This is his thought or his thoughts on coming generations, but not just the generation of his son. It's talking about scientific and technological advancements, that humans were being replaced by a Homo superior. Do you remember? Gotta make way for the Homo superior.
Well, he said there's a line. I got it here on my notes. Which song was that? Well, the second song. "Oh, You Pretty Things." He says Homo sapiens have outgrown their use.
Yes. It's the same lyric you said, but with what I said before. They're the start of the coming race. The earth is a bitch. We finished our news. Homo sapiens have outgrown their use. All the nightmares came today. I love that song, man. But musically as well, it got compared at the time to Martha, My Dear by the Beatles. You hear that the kind of honky tonk piano going on, like, very simple, just the vocals and the piano. And Bowie also compared the bass line to a Paul McCartney bass line. So no guesses for who influenced his thought on "Oh You Pretty Things." But I just thought it was funny that you're just hearing, and through the album, there's a song. Is it song 9 or 10?
Which one?
Maybe even 11.
9 is song for Bob Dylan.
It could be that one. It's the one where he actually mentions Churchill.
No, that's Quicksand. That's Quicksand.
Is it Quicksand?
He mentions Alistair Crowley and Church on the same song.
That's it. So he's talking about his influence. I mean, not influences, but what he's been reading. And I just wonder, is there ever been such an obvious statement about what has inspired this album? Because look at what he's done. Kooks is so obviously about his son. On the handwritten notes that come with the vinyl or whatever, he's written for small Z near the back for Zoe, for his son.
Yeah.
In Quicksand, he spoke about Crowley and Churchill.
Yeah.
And he's just making this so obvious. A song for Bob Dylan. What does he say? Now hear this, Robert Zimmerman. I wrote a song for you. Strange young man named Dylan with a voice like sand and glue. That's funny, by the way. He's just naming all of... And when he's not naming them, he is going out of his way to sound like them. Excuse me. The song... Sorry, let me just quickly... Queen Bitch is just such a fantastically original way to make a song try and sound like the Velvet Underground as much as possible, isn't it?
Exactly. You've got all the elements there because it talks about nightlife. You have the kind of up-tempo groove, and you have the kind of double tempo for the chorus and pre-chorus, and it's a straightforward rock song.
Yeah,
it's not complex. It's totally Lou Reed. Really is. It really is, and it could have been written by him. If you think about it. I would dare to say that.
The Bob Dylan one sounds just like a Bob Dylan song.
That's it. I think he was Bowie at this time. He was totally fearless. I'm just going to do an album the way I want it, and it's like, and there is a connection between the songs in terms of production and arrangement. They do make them sound like part of the same thing, but lyric wise, there's no compromise. It's just like I want to say this, I'll say this, and that's it. No compromise, and no necessity to stick to a theme. Although it's about a man growing up and starting a family or whatever, that's that, and then reflecting on his brother in the past. But
I hear what you're saying, because it's that's not a theme that's going on throughout the album. Much more in this song and a tiny bit in this song. It's just 2 songs are about his son. You got 3 about the occult and the philosophy of life, and then you've got a couple about his influences.
Yeah.
So let's talk about his influences. Andy Warhol, Bob Dylan, and Lou Reed / Velvet Underground. All really kind of important people at the time. The Velvet Underground were doing quite a lot for rock music. Moving on from the kind of Beatles-esque rock and roll we were used to in the 60s, bringing it much more modern, slowly making, not the change to heavy metal and hard rock, but bringing in some of those harder sounding guitars. And Lou Reed as a frontman was just quite special, especially in the 70s. Bob Dylan, I mean, this is what Bowie said about Song for Bob Dylan. The meaning behind the song was that Dylan did for folk and pop what Bowie wanted to do for rock and roll. And this is what Bowie said. There's even a Song for Bob Dylan, that laid out what I wanted to do in rock. It was at that period that I said, okay, Dylan, if you don't want to do it, I will. I saw that leadership void. Even though the song isn't one of the most important on the album, it represented for me what the album was all about. If there wasn't someone who's going to use rock and roll, then I'd do it.
Wow.
Which is funny, because actually that doesn't really make an entirely amount of sense, because he wrote all these songs for everyone else. Yeah. And if and when they weren't used, by the way, guys, some of these were recorded. Which one is it? It was Oh You Pretty Things. That was a hit for Peter Noone in June 1971. So it was released. It was used for its original intention, but then Bowie afterwards wrote his version of it. Which is funny, like I said, isn't it? Because he's trying to say that it's an important theme of the album, but we've just said that actually there is not really a common link between all of these songs. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, again, it's just a reflection of that moment in time. That's what I think. And it's okay. Yeah. I know this. Yeah, he's written songs for other people, but they maybe they couldn't be suitable for anyone.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, you never know.
Because it's so personal. It's so personal.
Exactly.
Some of this stuff, like how would you dare to sing lyrics that are not, they're like obvious and shocking at the same time. They as you use the word obvious, and he is straight to the point with loads of stuff, and it's kind of, okay, I'm really talking about this. I'm going to mention the names. I'm going to say Dylan. I'm going to name a song after Andy Warhol, that kind of stuff. So it's very direct to the point. But it's his choice of words is not predictable. So I find it really hard for anyone to interpret a song where the lyrics are, that complex, but delivering a simple message at the same time.
Let me tell you what he said. I gotta find which song it is. Right, so it is the Bowie brothers, because there's a lot of sinister and kind of suicide, homoerotic, nightmare kind of stuff in this song. The lyrically is quite odd. But he said, it's a song for the American markets because the Americans always like to read into things, even though the lyrics make absolutely no sense. That's him saying that, and I think, with the Bowie brothers things and some of the lyrics, you can look into that about the relationship with his brother. But for a songwriter, it doesn't always have to be that way. It doesn't always have to be, oh, I'm writing a song about my brother, and so I'm going to start with that thought in mind. Sometimes you can just, and I say this as someone who has written a handful of songs for myself. They're not famous songs. They're not, they may not go anywhere, but you can sometimes just take a thought or a feeling, or you look out the window and you see something, you see a movie on your shelf, a poster in your office, and you think, oh, okay, well, maybe I can, how does that make me feel? Let's try something with that. And maybe as he goes on with the lyrics, that's when he starts drawing influences from his life, like his relationship with his brother, like his son's birth coming forward. But it really is just it's just the portrait of a man in his life at that time, isn't it? Trying to make sense of his life.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it feels to me like I don't know where I'm going, but I have no fear. That's how it sounds.
No fear of what's ahead. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, let's just go for it. Let's embrace. And I find it hard, to be honest, to listen to this album without commitment. I think you need to, if you have a record player, is even better. Put the vinyl there.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool to just, as I said, spare 45 minutes of your day to listen to a masterpiece like this one?
Yeah,
because there's so much in it. There's so many layers of information and feelings and poetry. So again, I believe if there's a legacy that we're going to leave with this show, is like make people think about art in a different way, like listen to music, try to understand what the artist wants to give it, because people like David Bowie, I think they lived life in another level. They experienced things in such a way, and they were capable of translating feelings that maybe we all have, but they were capable of translating those feelings into melodies and words. So let's appreciate that. Why not?
I would not be surprised if I listened to that not knowing that he had written it for other people. I wouldn't have been surprised if you told me, because there isn't really a consistency with the songs in terms of style, genre, lyric. They're all a bit of this, Life on Mars gives you your glam rock, that he very, pushed on with that. You got Kooks, which was quite this uplifting indie hippie acoustic song. Bob Dylan was a Bob Dylan song. Queen Bitch was a Velvet Underground song. And then you got things like, Oh You Pretty Things and Changes, which for me became sort of staple Bowie. I love those tunes, very early Bowie. But yeah, man, it's a fantastic album. Would you have anything else to finish up on? What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I think this is one side of Bowie. It's the start of what he was to become. But the fact that he didn't try to repeat himself is just beautiful. And this is one. So what he did in this album, you can't find those elements elsewhere. You can't find it in his other albums. He wasn't trying to repeat himself.
Exactly. It was so important for that time. wasn't it? For that moment in his life. So I'm going to finish off with the Laz monologue. Just give you my usual little couple of sentences at the end. So these are my thoughts on the album. Hunky Dory is a wonderfully written album that blooms from the orchestration of Mick Ronson, based around the masterful piano skills of Rick Wakeman. It enables Bowie's voice to be free and perform, allowing the listener to engage with Bowie's thoughts and lyrics, and the music be a fantastically kind of background issue. You know, the lyrics and the vocal melody are the first and forefront. Now, on the lyrics, be this his concern about the impending doom of his generation, his own struggles with life and his place in the world, the homages paid to his heroes, or the nervousness surrounding the imminence of his son's birth. Whilst this was a bunch of songs written for other people, Bowie has written, composed and compiled them into his own with the huge help of Rick Wakeman and Ronson and the other musicians who would then go on to be the Spiders from Mars. We have seen in this album a man who is struggling with multiple aspects of his life, and he has turned those struggles into art.
That was a beautiful monologue.
Thank you.
This has become my favorite part of the show.
Oh, that's really nice, bro. Do you know what? I tell you how it started is that I write down sentences of my thoughts on it, just so that when we're doing the episode, if you mention something, I think, oh yeah, I wrote that, let me find it. But then I write sentences and I say to myself, without tooting my own trumpet, that's a good line. I should make sure I say that. So I highlight them, and then I'm like, oh, I can't find a place. Felipe hasn't mentioned the bass, so I can't mention that. Oh, do you know what? I should just put them all into one paragraph at the end and just read it. So that is how we got Laz's monologue. Yeah. Excellent. All right, guys. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us. I've done it the last 2 episodes, so I'm not going to tell you everywhere you can find us this time. Felipe, tell them where they can find us.
You can find us on the internet.
There we go. Very simple. There's a thing called Google. You just type it in and we're there. So
yeah. And if you listen to this 150 years from now and Google is not a thing, but the internet's still there, so you can still find us.
Can you imagine if Bing, Microsoft's version of Google, became the superior search engine in 150 years?
We'll never know.
Never know. Exactly.
Maybe we're gonna find out by then if there's life on Mars.
Or maybe we'll find out Homo sapiens have outgrown their use. Yeah. I had to search for that.
Thank you, guys. And keep on rocking, everyone.
And as usual, guys, take care and long live rock and roll.